More evidence that liberals and Democrats are panicking right now over this election. I want to know the proof? Well, they're trying to inject race into this election. We're going to show you all the evidence coming straight from, well, the racial swamp of MSNBC. Plus, Karine Jean-Pierre, very defensive about that ICE report showing that Biden and Harris have let criminals into this country. She goes at it with Peter Doocy, and we'll give you all of those details. Plus, longshoremen strike. Who's to blame? And as this is seen right out of Sopranos, it's ugly and it's going to get even uglier. And you can blame Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for it. All that plus transgender operations on illegals. You betcha. Next. Right now, in fact, I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Let me be clear, we're not actually going to perform transgender operations on illegal immigrants. It made it sound, I teased the show, and I made it sound like one of our segments would, in fact, be that of a transgender surgical procedure on an illegal immigrant, and that's not what we're going to do today. Not today. But Kamala Harris would like that, and she wants to use your tax dollars for it, and we're going to explain all of that coming up in just a bit. Hey, thanks for watching. This is Town Hall Media. Catch us across all of our Town Hall sites. That's townhall.com, redstate.com, hotair.com, pjmedia.com, twitchy.com, and bearingarms.com. We've got some really cool websites with great apps and great news available to you, as well as a VIP experience that you're going to love. If you want to be one of our Town Hall VIP members, why don't you just use the code Larry to get 50% off? That gives you an ad-free experience on our sites. It also gives you exclusive VIP-only content, and even better, it helps us continue to do the journalism that we're doing, and it's pretty good, if I may say so. It's so good that the hierarchy at the big tech places, you know, those people who control everything, they'd love to demonetize us. They'd love to destroy us and get us out of the conversation. That's why your support through our VIP program is so important. So go check it out. Go to our websites. Use the code Larry, that's me, and you'll get 50% off. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yesterday, we showed you how Donald Trump is doing really, really well with the Latino vote, with young people voting, with women, actually, of certain demographic groups. And, well, it's really going to make an impact in this election if this trend continues over the next 5 weeks. MSNBC, obviously, the spokespeople for the Democratic Party. Actually, it's not even fair to call them that. They're the brain trust for the Democrats. I know everybody thinks that in the Democrat media complex, as Andrew Breitbart first called them, that Democrat media complex means the people in the media do whatever the Democrats want them to do, right? The White House or the Kamala Harris campaign, they decide something and then they call up their friends at the media and they say, hey, let's go with this. We just came up with something. Actually, these days it works a little different. It's MSNBC that comes up with the ideas. It's MSNBC that drives the narrative. In some ways, MSNBC creates the narrative, and then the politicians follow. That's how insidious this has become. Why? Well, here's a good example. Take a look at this lady. See that redhead there on the side of the screen? She's an employee of MSNBC News right now. Where was she a year ago? She was an employee of the White House. That's that revolving door. So she's actually much more effective for Democrats, for Biden, for Kamala Harris, by working at an NBC News outlet. She creates the narrative, and then the campaign picks it up. Yesterday, we showed you how they are panicking right now and they're upset because Trump is doing very well, especially this close to the election, right? And look at the reaction they had about Black voters moving toward Trump and Latino voters moving toward Trump. Watch this.
It is calculated, right? I mean, Donald Trump isn't just a doddering fool who happens to be racist. He's a calculated person who is not trying to grow his vote share. He's trying to speak into the id of a particular kind of voter about when he says we have to call out Detroit, Philly, and Atlanta. We have to go into Philly, Detroit, Atlanta. He lost Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Michigan in 2020, which is how he lost the election. It's why he's under indictment for attempting to steal those races. What he's telling his voters, his small, his share of extreme MAGA voters, these Blacks are stealing the election. Black Haitians are violent cannibals. Black people are the enemy. Black people are going to be responsible if and when I lose, and you are permitted through my language to do violence to them if necessary to stop another peaceful transfer of power, because he understands that he is not winning the election.
Now, the kind of hateful lies that you just saw over on MSNBC can't even be calculated. I mean, we'll begin with the blatant lie that Donald Trump is under indictment for trying to steal elections in Michigan and Pennsylvania. That's not at all what Donald Trump is under indictment for. The indictments are frauds as they are, but that's actually not even the fraudulent reason why he's under indictment. But you just heard Joy Reid say that Donald Trump is threatening violence against Black people in those states if the election doesn't go their way. There's absolutely no indication at all. That's just a complete and total blatant lie. But look at that little peacock in the lower corner there. That's the MSNBC brand. That's the NBC News brand. That's Comcast Universal, publicly traded, by the way, on Wall Street, owning what you just saw from Joy Reid. You know how bad it is? I'm going to skip to the last 20 seconds of this clip, not in real time. I just want you to look at Jen Psaki's face. Actually, look at Joy Reid's face, too. That's a great freeze on Joy Reid. That's about right, especially with the Barbie doll blue eyeshadow. Look at Jen Psaki's face. Even she knows that this is bullshit. She knows exactly what kind of bull this is. Look at that face. She can't hide it. She's not that good. You can tell that even she inside is nauseated. She wants to take a bit of a Brillo pad shower after sitting through this. But listen, she's got an election to win. And if that means having Joy Reid, this blatant racist, go on the air and falsely accuse Donald Trump, and let's be real, she's accusing you for supporting Donald Trump of peddling in blatant racism that's trying to rile up violence against Black people in America, well, then that's what Jen Psaki is going to do, because her primary function right now is to try to defeat Donald Trump and Republicans. That's all it means. And if that means having Joy Reid on here to spew this, that's great. I look at this and I get nauseated by it. I get angry by it, but I get motivated by it, because this motivates us to continue to work even harder to push back against this and bring the love to this campaign. Love for all Americans, regardless of color, because we see Black and Latino and Asian and white and men and women and old and young people who are all rallying around the Republican ticket right now because we're sick of this. We're so sick of this. I have one other emotion when I see this too, and I want you to have this emotion too. I want you to laugh when you see this. Not just at Joy Reid for being a clown, literally with the clown makeup and the clown hair right now, but laugh at Comcast Universal. I just mentioned them. They're the publicly held corporation that owns this. They actually own this. They paid for this, and they proudly put it out to divide our country. Laugh at Comcast Universal. Laugh at NBC Network. Laugh at NBC News, and granularly laugh at MSNBC, because they can never fire Joy Reid. They are stuck with her. They cannot let her contract expire without renewing it. In fact, they'll be forced to give her a raise when her contract is up. They have already signed her to a primetime deal, knowing that she said homophobic things about gay people back in her time. They already knew that. She lied about that, and even triggered an FBI investigation into whether her website was hacked, even though she knew that she had not been hacked. So it was a false report to the FBI. They've allowed all of that to happen. They have let her say anything every single day. In fact, they promoted her from a weekend show to a primetime show, knowing exactly who she is, knowing exactly what she brings to the table, and they've allowed it to happen. They put her on primetime for election night coverage. They are so stuck with her. What can she say at this point to make NBC News say, that's it, we're done with you? You've gone too far. They absolutely can't. And if they decided, we're just going to go in a different direction, ratings aren't there, revenue's not good, we're going to have to bring in a different host, Joy Reid and Al Sharpton and every single race hustler on the left, and that's a lot of them, they will be on the front lawn of the CEO of Comcast Universal with bullhorns screaming, no Joy Reid, no peace. No primetime, no peace. They are so stuck with Joy Reid, and it's amazing to watch. So this makes me laugh. It actually makes me laugh at how screwed Comcast Universal is by agreeing to put this woman on the air, knowing that she is a race-baiting, divisive, hateful lunatic. But that's just the tip of the iceberg over there in terms of their panic and in terms of their odious attempt to inject race into this political campaign. Take a look at this. This is a White House correspondent for Politico. In fact, I think he's the president of the White House Correspondents Association, Eugene Daniels. You'll remember him with that magnificent fro. And I'm not being ironic. That's a good-looking fro. He was one of the 3 journalists from the National Association of Black Journalists who interviewed Kamala Harris in that incredibly cringe exchange that they had 2 weeks ago. Take a look at this.
He has a hard time running against Vice President Harris because she's a Black woman. You remember, Ashley, when he would tussle with the women that would ask him questions, our colleagues on the White House beat. Reporters. You know, he held his kind of most angry self for Black women, right? If they asked him a question, he would have the worst things to say about them. So you're seeing that, right?
I can think of 3 off the top of my head.
And when he talked about Joe Biden got worse, Harris was born like that, right? That's different. That's a dog whistle to folks to say, you know, the white guy just got older and it got worse, but the Black lady was born dumb. That is the kind of thing that Donald Trump is saying and selling to folks.
There you go. This is Donald Trump brings out his most angry self, according to this White House correspondent for Politico, because he's running against a Black woman, right? By the way, this is the roundtable. It's George Conway. That roundtable. I remember news shows when they first brought on the roundtable concept, where they would have different ideas and different perspectives from journalists or analysts, or maybe former politicians, or even sometimes current politicians. So you could have a roundtable discussion. A roundtable discussion is supposed to bring different perspectives and different ideas to a news topic so that the audience could be informed and enlightened about different perspectives on the news. I'm pretty sure this roundtable on Jen Psaki's show was, please bring your different personal perspective and analysis on just how hateful and racist Donald Trump is. And they're all Trump haters. The entire roundtable was Trump hater. Usually they'd have the token conservative, the token Republican, right? Like on CNN, they're still using Scott Jennings, and he still defeats everybody at the table. By the way, this guy who's the White House correspondent for Politico and the president of the White House Correspondents Association, I believe, should Trump win the election, he'll be a reporter in the room. He'll be a reporter in the White House press room on behalf of Politico, to ask fair and balanced questions on behalf of their readers. It gets worse. Let's keep it on MSNBC, because, boy, they want race riots in this country. Hey, it worked in 2020 with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. But, boy, it's just really tough luck for the Democrats this year that they didn't have a cop kill a Black man. Although there's 5 weeks left, you never know what might happen. They might get lucky. But short of that, they got to figure out a way to get a race riot in. So let's see what else they have to say.
Do you have that clip, Larry? Hey, Larry, we don't have that clip.
Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry.
Donald Trump got in 2020. So it took historic numbers to beat him. Right? And so now we get enamored with the Dick Cheneys and the Liz Cheneys and the Flakes and the da-da-da-da, right? And this man is running around here busting his chops, scaring the hell out of communities, right? And we're trying to figure out how to keep that middle, locked in on her when she needs to bust him in his mouth. I'm saying it like that because he's dangerous. He's dangerous to particular people. And the history of the country is such that we can't play fast and loose with it. Isn't
it incumbent on all of us to protect the people who are endangered by him?
But you never have. That's the rub. You never have. And so part of what we have to do in the midst of this is to engage in a deep-seated political calculus, right? Even though we know that she has to get the middle, we got to come out and try to figure out how to turn out in large historic numbers, because we got to keep this troglodyte out of office. Because if he comes in, our babies are going to be in danger. Because remember, those young children are going to grow up with the memory of having to not go to school for the threat of bombs. And somebody told them that their moms and dads eat cats and dogs. I'll get myself together, Claire.
Okay, take a minute. Deep breath.
Well, what about that?
I understand what you're saying.
He's going to cry. He was close to tears on that one. We have to protect our babies. He's a troglodyte. Again, drumming up the hate, dividing over racial lines. I think my favorite part there is when Nicole Wallace, the Republican at this panel, said that, well, it's not just Black people who are supposed to protect the most vulnerable people of color. Isn't it incumbent on all of us?
We can't play fast and loose with it. Fast and loose with it.
Isn't it incumbent on all of us to protect the people who are endangered by him?
But you never have.
Look at the white guilt. That's the face of white guilt. Look at that white guilt. And she's not allowed to say, well, wait a second. You don't know anything about me. You don't know that. No. See, he just indicted her because of her skin color. She's white. And also she used to be a Republican. I think she still claims to be a Republican, which is just delightful. And look at how she can't say a damn thing. Here's the Black man sitting at this panel, injecting race into this conversation and making the entire presidential race about racial politics, because again, they're terrified at the numbers that are coming in right now. Black people, by the way, this is a great moment of white guilt and white shaming the white women at this table. But the message, just so you know, the message from this man is for Black voters. He's angry at Black voters right now, especially Black men, because Black men are voting for Trump in numbers that they've never seen before. And so he's trying to bring those voters back by trying to make them feel guilty. The funny thing is, though, they're not the putty in his hands like these white liberals are at this table. So listen to the end. Listen to the silence here. When she says, well, aren't we all supposed to protect the people who are endangered by Donald Trump? Endangered by Donald Trump. And he says, you never have. And then the white guilt on that. Look at the white guilt on that.
That's the rub. You never have.
Look at them all. They can't respond. They're not allowed to respond. And right inside, they are flagellating themselves delightfully. They love it over their own white guilt. You know, whenever everyone talks about how this election is going to come down to white suburban moms, that's who's sitting at that table. That's who's sitting at that table. And they are powerless against that kind of accusation. That is the most manipulative, mean-spirited, obnoxious, disgusting thing I've seen somebody do on cable news, but I'm not surprised. It's MSNBC and he's a liberal. But this is the conversation going on over there. I know you don't watch. I don't want you to watch. I want you to come here, so I watch it for you, and I tell you what happened. That's the Black versus white racial politics that they injected. But they didn't end there on MSNBC. I told you yesterday about the polls showing Latino voters swinging over in huge numbers to Donald Trump. So we had to talk about that racial aspect. We had to inject racism into that discussion. Wait till you hear what this woman says about Latino voters who are voting for Trump.
She has a 14-point lead, but it has been shrinking after each consecutive presidential election from 2016. Right. Why is that? Why is the Democratic share of the Latino vote shrinking?
And what I said to you when we asked the question was, Latinos want to be white. They want to be with the cool kids. They want to be... I'm asking Latinos all the time, and they just say, well, ese Donald Trump es tan buen negociante. He's such a good businessman. It's like, no, he's not. He had bankruptcies. But they don't want to be identified with all of those other immigrants that Donald Trump speaks so badly of, including me as a Mexican immigrant. So they're like, we'd rather, let's be with him. But those numbers, they could cost Kamala Harris the election. Everything that I've been saying that Latinos could push her over the top, these are the numbers that could also take her down.
And now she's right about that last part, that these numbers are an existential threat to Kamala Harris. That's why you're seeing this narrative on MSNBC in the last 24 hours. It's almost like they watched our show yesterday and panicked. But did you catch that? You know, what's the deal? Why are these Latino voters voting this way? And the only explanation is because they want to be white. Again, is there anything more racist than this? They are the most racist people in the room while they're screaming racist at the rest of us. One other little tidbit here that I really enjoyed. While you're watching this show, MSNBC, look in the lower right-hand corner there. Let's blow that up as big as we can. In fact, here, let me do this for you. They, oh, you're not going to, oh, hang on. It won't let me zoom in on that. While you're watching this racism play out on MSNBC. They're promoting later today our primetime racism special, Black Women in America, The Road to 2024. With, by the way, Simone Sanders. See the closely cropped hair black woman there who's going to host it? Who's Simone Sanders? Well, she used to be a spokesperson for the Bernie Sanders campaign during the 2020 election. And then she got a job in Kamala Harris's comms department when Kamala Harris became vice president. Now, like most people who work for Kamala Harris, she left within a year because only 92% of the people who worked for Kamala Harris in the last 3.5 years left. She's got 8% of her staff remaining. But needless to say, once again, like Jen Psaki, like George Stephanopoulos, like Jake Tapper, like Chuck Todd, like Jim Sciutto, like, oh gosh, I just can't list all of them. They all used to work for Democrats, politicians, and now they work in the media because they're journalists, don't you know? And the entire program tonight at 9 p.m. on MSNBC is Black Women in America, Road to 2024. They're desperate. They're absolutely desperate, and they're scared, and they're angry, and we're 5 weeks out, and they're lashing out at you. They're lashing out at all of us. They're lashing out at anyone who isn't going to stay on the reservation. Some would say stay on the plantation and vote the way they demand they vote. Hang on. It's going to be a rocky 35 days. With the massive tax hikes proposed by Kamala Harris right now, and we're talking an almost 40% top income tax rate, 7% increase to the corporate tax, capital gains tax on unrealized gains, and the fact that her proposals could add almost $2 trillion to an already $2 trillion deficit, you might be thinking it's time to make more of your savings tax sheltered right now and inflation sheltered. Well, that's where the good people at Birch Gold Group can help you. Birch Gold will assist you in converting an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. And the best news, you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Just text the word Larry. That's me. That's my name. Larry. Larry to 989898. Get a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation. You're just going to get information on fortifying your savings before the crazy really hits. They've got an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. You should contact Birch Gold Group, okay? Text Larry to the number 989898. Get that free info kit today. And here's the thing. I know we don't want her to win. I don't want her to win. I think we're going to win. But if she does win, all those things that I just laid out, that's what's going to happen to our economy. So be prepared. Get your free info kit on gold right now from Birch Gold Group, just in case. All right, now you saw the report. We talked about it yesterday that ICE put out while Kamala Harris was going down to the border for her 20-minute photo op in front of the wall that she hates and stopped the construction of and spoke out against her entire political career. While she was getting that photo op, ICE released a report. It was really a letter responding to a senator's request about the data related to those who have been released in America that had been encountered and apprehended trying to cross the border illegally. Over 400,000 of them are convicted criminals from their home states, with numbers including over 13,000 convicted murderers. It was a blockbuster story. And yesterday, finally, the White House had to answer questions about it, most specifically Karine Jean-Pierre. And of course, the only questions came from the only person interested in asking real questions in that room, Peter Doocy. Watch this.
15,000 people who have been convicted of murder cross the border illegally and are living among us. So how much danger are U.S. communities in right now because of this?
I'm assuming you're talking about the ICE data.
Yes.
So just a couple of things, and I think it's important to correct the record here. First of all, the false representation of the data ICE shared. So that was what we are seeing, false representation. I got to call that out. We got to call that out. And it's been fact checked by some of your colleagues here, by multiple outlets that has been debunked on what has been falsely misrepresented here. So we have to call that out. And so, look,
can you clarify what the misrepresentation is?
The numbers that is being put out about how many.
Yeah, let me hang on. I'm gonna let you finish there, Karine Jean-Pierre, but this is an important thing. So Peter Doocy asked a good question. ICE report came out, showed the data. hundreds of thousands of convicted criminals here in America that were let free to roam our streets, including over 10,000 murderers, about 10,000 rapists. Are American streets safe? And for the first minute of this answer, it was like, oh, that's been fact-checked. The data was misrepresented. You guys are spewing lies, blah, 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 blah. And Peter Doocy's follow-up is a very important one. Can you explain how it's been misrepresented? Please clear the record. I mean, in fact, why didn't she just do that at the beginning? Oh, thank you for the opportunity, Peter, because this information has been misreported. Here are the facts, right? But instead, we got to spend a minute slamming Fox News, slamming, right of center media, anybody who's not a corporate shill for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats. We got to attack them. All right, fine. So Peter Doocy follows up. Please take this opportunity. Educate us. Fix the problem. Get the truth out. You've got this platform. Look at your podium. Look at your very smart fuchsia suit. Everyone is hanging on your every word. Please now clear the record. So here's Karine Jean-Pierre taking advantage of this opportunity. She's going to clear the record and explain how that ICE data has been misrepresented. Let's watch, shall we? In fact, if you can, take notes, because this is really compelling stuff. Here we go. I can't wait to be educated. I can't wait to hear the truth about this.
The numbers that is being put out about how many people are out has been falsely represented here. If you look at the total returns and removal of the past year, that has been higher than every year under the previous administration since 2010, if you look at it. And if we're going to report something, a data that's out there, we got to do it in a way that is not confusing the American people and certainly not lying. And so this has been fact-checked, and so this is the way that is being falsely represented here is just not okay. And they'll got to be really clear about that.
Wow, you were incredibly clear about that. That cleared everything up, didn't it? It's not confusing in the slightest. The issue was that there's data being released by ICE in response to a senator's request about the criminal records of those that have been released in this country after being encountered by Border Patrol agents. Over 400,000 that are in this country have criminal convictions from their home countries, including over 10,000 for murder and about 10,000 for sexual assault. Karine Jean-Pierre claims that it was all misrepresented. So let's watch it again. This is her clearing that up. And again, see, if I'm her and that data was misrepresented, I would say this. You guys said 13,000 convicted murderers here, but that's not true. Here's how many there are. You said there were 10,000 rapists here in the country that were released, but that's not true. Here's the facts. Here's the truth. Here's the data. She didn't do that when she cleared this up, when she explained what had been misrepresented. Once again, here's your White House press secretary taking advantage of the opportunity to call out the misrepresentation and give us the actual truth about this report. Okay, let's watch together so that we can actually get the truth.
And so, look,
Can you clarify what the misrepresentation is?
The numbers that is being put out about how many people are out has been falsely represented here.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the total returns and removal of the past year.
Total returns and the removals of the past year.
That has been higher than every year.
That has been, I think she means have been, higher than every year.
Under the previous administration since 2010.
So the removals and returns over the past year have been higher than any administration since 2010. Okay, we're with you. Can you get to the part about the convicted felons and criminals and murderers and rapists who have been left in the country? Can you get to that part, please? Because I think that's what the question was really all about.
If you look at it. And if we're going to report something, a data that's out there, we got to do it in a way that is not confusing the American people and certainly not lying.
Well, and there's nothing confusing about that, and certainly no lies involved there. I don't know about you, but I'm not satisfied with Karine Jean-Pierre's explanation as to why this is misrepresented. So I've got an idea. Let's go to the data itself. Here's the letter. It was Congressman, I'm sorry, I said Senator. It was Congressman Tony Gonzalez who had originally asked for this information. This is, by the way, I do like the fact that it says, I apologize for the delay. I wonder how long this delay really was. This has to do with responding, in the first couple of paragraphs says, we love Congress and we love transparency and we love answering your questions via oversight. Yeah, they don't. Your letter requests the number of non-citizens on ICE's docket convicted or charged with a crime. As of July 21st, 2024, there were 662,000 non-citizens with criminal histories in ICE's national docket, including those detained by ICE and an agency's non-ticketed docket. Of those, 435,719 are convicted criminals. Now, I'm sure somewhere in there, I've just misrepresented the facts because I did something really sneaky and deceitful. I just read directly from the letter delivered by ICE. ICE, by the way, which is an agency under the control of the Biden administration. I read you exactly what the letter says. I'm sure I'm going to be accused of misrepresenting something. By the way, they also put together this very useful table. This is public information. You can get it anywhere. Check social media. National docket data for non-citizens by criminality and most serious charge category. It's in alphabetical order, so you'd be surprised. Being convicted of an antitrust violation, there's only one of them. Imagine that guy. You know, why'd you have to include in my antitrust conviction? Come on. But we got arson, we got assault, 42,000. Commercialized sexual offenses, 17,700, convicted criminal, 2,200. What is a commercialized sexual offense? Is that where in the middle of the sexual offense you stop for a paid endorsement or something? What is it? Did Nike sponsor it? Dangerous drugs, 56,000. Family offenses, 6,400. Oh, look, they couldn't fit them all on one page. Fraudulent activities, 15,000. General crimes, 11,000. I do like that. Doesn't fall into any of these other categories. General crimes. The poor antitrust guy over there. Couldn't you just put me in general crimes? Homicide, 13,000. Immigration offenses, only 52,000. Aren't they all guilty of immigration offenses? Oh, no. Only 52,000 have been convicted. So they've already been convicted of violating our immigration law, and then they're back again. That's good. Larceny, 18,000. I'm only going for 5 digits and above, by the way. Robbery, 10,000. Sex offenses not involving assault or commercialized sex. Oh, maybe commercialized sex is like prostitution, sex trafficking, pornography. That's 9,400. I made an exception there because it's close enough to 10,000. Sexual assault, 15,000. Traffic offenses, 77,000. That explains why it's so delightful to drive on roads in major cities right now. Weapon offenses, 13,000. Now, again, I'm sure that I am guilty of misrepresenting this data and of lying or exaggerating in some way. I know that Karine Jean-Pierre would not accept what I just gave you because I literally just read the data directly from the letter itself. And it would be a crying shame if you did the same so that you could educate yourself about what is going on under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'd play the clip again of Karine Jean-Pierre clearing this up and explaining to you why this has all been misrepresented and lied about. But I don't have time for her misrepresentation and lies. But I would like to hand this over to my buddy, Greg Gutfeld, and he actually is a friend, because on the 5 on Friday, he put it all in perspective.
In the real world, she would be toast. And I don't like getting riled up for no reason because this story is so unbelievable. I wanted to see if it was reported elsewhere. You know, it couldn't find it on MSNBC, CNN, Drudge. You have the release of hundreds of thousands of foreign criminals, like they emptied the jails, raped thousands of rapists, thousands of murderers. And on the pages of all of these networks, the death of Maggie Smith, which is sad, great actress, Lana Del Rey's marriage, P. Diddy rumors, but nothing about what is easily one of the most big, probably the biggest crime story I've ever seen. So we know that Democrats watch this show. Some of them hate watching. But if you're watching this, the media doesn't want you to know this information. They don't want it to reach you. They would rather you die or be raped than Trump be right or find out the truth. So you can hate Fox all you want, you can hate Trump all you want, you can hate me, but you can't hate yourself and your family so much that you're going to ignore a story that puts them in danger. Now, even if these numbers are off.
I'm going to let him finish there, but that part about the media just literally ignoring this story. There were only a few outlets that picked it up. And of course, all of our town hall sites at Town Hall Media covered it. But that's not an accident. Okay. Now, during October of 4 years ago in 2020, when they all decided to ignore the Hunter Biden laptop story because it would have damaged Joe Biden, and post-election polls showed that a good percentage of Biden voters would have not voted for him had they known all of the contents of that laptop. They decided to ignore it, but they came up with a story. They came up with a fake narrative, a fiction that as to why they wouldn't cover the story. They claimed it was Russian disinformation, right? They said it was propaganda. They claimed it was a lie. Worse than a lie, they claimed that Donald Trump and his team and the New York Post were peddling in Russian disinformation. In other words, they're working with the enemy to alter the election. Now, they haven't done that with this one. Instead of lying about it, instead of claiming that it was Russian disinformation, they've just decided to all hold hands and leap off the cliff together and just ignore something that is obviously vital news and information on literally the number one or number two most important topic and issue for every voter in America right now. It changes between border security and immigration and the economy. And I would argue that if you're worried about border security and you're worried about our immigration policies right now and what's happened in the last 3.5 years, that directly affects the economy. So it really is the number one issue. And every single major media outlet in this country ignored the story. And Greg Gutfeld said it right. They would rather you and your family be harmed than actually know the truth about what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done here. They don't want you to be right. They don't want Donald Trump to be right. They don't want your vote for Donald Trump in 2016 and possibly in 2020 to be validated. They want you to still feel guilty that you voted for Donald Trump. And the last thing they want is for you to say, look, when we don't protect our border, we let criminals into this country, and every crime they commit is a crime that could have been prevented by just securing our border and following our own immigration laws in this country. They don't want you to actually rest easy knowing that your vote was completely 100% justified. And so they ignore it. They ignore the news. They are in the business of ignoring the news. Finish it up, Greg.
Off by 50%. Please, I think that the fact checkers should fact check it. Tell us, no, it's not 16,000 rapists. It's only 8,000. It's only 7,000 murders. Cool. I'm glad you're okay with that. I'll take your fact check. But anybody who defends this or says it's not that big a deal is complicit, and they should be held accountable. Every victim of every crime by the people that are in here that we haven't vilified, who are actual villains, you need to file a class action suit against this government. These bastards were more offended by stories of cats being eaten than real stories reported here of actual rape and murder. And if you ask why those other stories existed, it was the only way to get these a-holes in the media to even look at this story. They can only see immigration as a gotcha moment for political gain. There are actual people that are dying. This is a huge story.
Yeah, it's a huge story. And unless you watch there or here or a few other places, you're not getting any of it. Tonight is a debate between the candidates for vice president, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. If you're watching this after the debate, you'll already have the answer to the question. But I'm curious, and maybe you can put something in the comments if you're watching in real time. What do you think the moderators from CBS News will bring up in the debate first? Do you think they'll bring up the issue of the current immigration border security catastrophe that we're witnessing right now, and this ICE report showing that over 400,000 convicted criminals, known convicted criminals, were let free in the United States under Kamala Harris's watch? Or do you think they'll raise a question about the cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio? What do you think will come up first? Or for that matter, which one do you think will be ignored completely? Go ahead and tell us in the comments section. So this morning, the longshoremen went on strike, and it's like we're doing a story from the 1940s, and Marlon Brando's involved on the waterfront. Longshoremen, when was the last time you thought about the dock workers in this country? Longshoremen are the dudes, mostly dudes, who handle offloading all the cargo ships at the major ports of entry around our country. We get a lot of tons and tons of commerce coming in from Europe and Africa, and then also from Asia, of course, coming off those cargo ships. They're in those shipping containers. They come out on the crane. They get put on a truck or on a train, and then they're sent everywhere. And the next thing you know, at your Costco or your Sam's Club, you're buying stuff. That's how it works when you're importing a ton of things. Remember that supply chain problem we're still suffering under because of Treasury Secretary Pete Buttigieg? Yeah, a lot of that involves getting the cargo off those ships and into the supply chain as fast as possible. And today, the longshoremen went on strike. Why haven't we heard about this? Why haven't we talked about it in decades? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the longshoremen have not gone on strike since 1977. President Jimmy Carter. By the way, happy birthday, Jimmy Carter, 100 years old. You know, when you're a president of, you were only a one-term president and you had a complete and total failure in your 4 years in office, maybe you've got a lot less stress in your life, and that helps you live longer. So looking forward to Joe Biden's 100th birthday about, what, 3 or 4 days from now? So back to the longshoremen. Yeah, this hasn't happened since 1977. The comparisons between this president's administration and his complete and total failure and Jimmy Carter's complete and total failure just never ends. But if you've seen the president of the longshoremen, this is something to behold. I mean, I mentioned Marlon Brando and On the Waterfront. Actually, take a look at my favorite episode of The Sopranos.
But today's world, it's changing into the future. They're not making millions no more. They're making billions. And they're spending it fast as they make it. I want a piece of that for my men, because when they made their most money was during COVID. When my men had to go to work on those piers every single day, when everybody stayed home and went to work. Not my men. They died out there with the virus. We all got sick with the virus. We kept them going. From Canada to Maine to Texas, Great Lakes, Puerto Rico, now the Bahamas, everybody went to work during COVID. Nobody stayed home. Well, I want to be compensated for that. I'm not asking for the world. They know what I want. They know what I want. And if they don't, well, then I have to go into the street and we have to fight for what we rightfully deserve. These people today don't know what a strike is. When my men hit the streets from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. The steel's not coming in. The lumber's not coming in. They lose their job. Everybody's hating the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are.
This is, listen, he's not wrong. That is, I mean, he just described exactly the supply chain and the import process in our country and how it affects commerce. Absolutely. He knows that he's got this economy by the nads. Can I say nads? Let's go with it. This is your quintessential mobster type. I'm not saying you're in the mob, sir. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying mobster type. This is your quintessential mobster type saying to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, real nice economy you got here. It'd be a shame for something to happen to it. You know what I'm saying? Let's play ball. Yeah, you got to admire this guy. He's not crying poverty. He's not saying that his workers are starving and they can't put their kids in a nice school and that their cars are broken down. They're not able to fix it. He's not saying that his brotherhood is on food stamps and they want to make a living wage. You know, remember how whenever you get people who are going on strike, teachers always do this. We need a living wage. We demand a living wage. He ain't saying that. No, he's saying everyone else got rich. Where's my piece? Look at him. He's got designer glasses. He's got a gold chain. What union head goes out on the first day of a strike wearing a gold chain to explain why he's got a work stoppage? He's shameless. He's absolutely shameless. He doesn't care. He doesn't give a at all. You heard it at the beginning of the clip. He said, oh, we're not even talking about millionaires anymore. We're talking about billionaires. Well, if they get to be billionaires, my guys get to be millionaires. Let's go. And now it starts to get a little threatening, right? I mean, this is good stuff. And by the way, just so you know, the message here is directly for Joe Biden. Joe Biden, you know, Lunch Bucket Joe, Blue Collar Joe, Scranton Joe, Union Guy Joe. Watch.
Now I have the president screaming at me, I'm putting a Taft-Hartley on you. Go ahead. Taft-Hartley means I have to go back to work for 90 days. That's a cooling off period. Do you think when I go back for 90 days, those men are going to go to work on that pier? It's going to cost the company's money to pay their salaries. Well, they went from 30 moves an hour maybe to 8.
By the way, real fast, Taft-Hartley is a set of rules and laws and regulations that were put in place by the federal government like over 100 years ago, I guess, right? And they were all meant to mitigate a lot of things. They were very pro-labor, by the way, for the most part, the Taft-Hartley laws. They were meant to mitigate a lot of the repercussions of strikes, empower organized labor when they did go on strike. It also put new regulations and rules on union pension funds and health and welfare funds so that the unions couldn't steal money from them, and to ensure that management who funds those pension funds and health and welfare funds don't cut them short, to make sure that the pension fund is always funded so that people who retire relying on their union pension are secure in that pension. It puts ERISA standards on those things. Don't ask me how I know this. It goes back to my previous life when I worked in the theater business. I actually sat on the board of a bunch of Taft-Hartley funds with the unions that work in the theater business. I just know these things. But he raised the idea of a Taft-Hartley thing. One provision in Taft-Hartley allows the president, the federal government, to call for an end to a strike if that strike has a direct effect on America's economy and national security, right? And so he just claimed that he's got the president calling him, threatening to call a Taft-Hartley moratorium on the strike, a cooling off period for 90 days. But here's what's funny about that. Yesterday at the White House, when Joe Biden was asked a couple of questions by a couple of reporters, it wasn't a press conference, but, you know, they shout questions at him. One of the questions was, Mr. President, will you intervene on the dock workers strike if they go on strike Tuesday? The president says, no. He says, why not? Says, because there's collective bargaining and I don't believe in Taft-Hartley. So even if Joe Biden is on the phone yelling and threatening a Taft-Hartley thing, Biden is undermining his own threat by saying publicly that he doesn't believe in Taft-Hartley. So it's a toothless threat. He's not going to do anything. If he calls Taft-Hartley right now, that undermines labor at a point where they've got a very, very good position in this negotiation. Union members already hate the Democrats and are, well, at the very best, not endorsing Kamala Harris, or they're staying out of it completely like the Teamsters did, right? So that ain't going to happen. The strike started this morning. And here's a quick look at our friend here, Joey Walnuts, or Paulie Soprano, or, you know what? Actually, this is more like a hybrid between what would have been Godfather 4 and maybe Goodfellas, right? I mean, either way, it just reeks of meatballs and marinara, let's say. I am so going to be hit I'm like, seriously, I'm staying out of Brooklyn for the rest of my life. I'm not going to make it through the streets alive. Here's the scene outside one of the labor strikes this morning.
Over the weekend, the past
Secretary of Labor, Julie Sue, has been terrific. She's knocking down doors. She's trying to stop this. She's trying to get us to a media where we can have a fair negotiations. It's the companies that don't want to. They don't want to sit here and be fair. So that's why we're out here fighting for our livelihood.
What more from the automation do you want? What more protections could there be?
What more?
Yeah, they have language in there now.
Not strong enough, because what happens is they come in with new technology. We just caught them in Mobile, Alabama, called Autogate. And that means the trucks are coming in and they're already checked in somewhere else and not using the checkers in the ILA. Circumventing the contract. They don't care. They don't care.
All right, let me translate this for you. One of the big arguments they have, other than wanting their fair share of the billions that people are making, is that the process for the longshoremen to offload these ships onto trucks and trains is getting more and more automated. I mean, you know that. I mean, back in the day when the longshoremen actually were organized officially, they would literally, these guys would, I mean, it was a painstaking job. They were pulling ropes and they were lugging these boxes and crates off of ships. And, you know, now you go and they've got these motorized, computerized cranes that go down and pick up the guys' already pre-packed shipping containers. And then they put them on. I mean, it's already been incredibly automated. And of course, with automation comes efficiency, lower cost. It's a good thing. Usually they don't want that because, well, you know, that's going to kill our jobs. We don't need efficiency right now. This is a jobs program, damn it. It reminds me of all of the fights you see in cities where, you know, the city councilmen all grandstand and say, we want a $20 minimum wage, $20 minimum wage. And those of us who are like, $20 minimum wage. So our Big Macs are going to cost $10, which is what they cost now, by the way. Big Mac value back. I don't eat a McDonald's very much, but this weekend I bought McDonald's value meal for someone who's been staying at my house, college kid. They eat Big Macs, right? So I got him a Big Mac value meal, medium, not even a supersized fries. Big Mac with fries and a soda. It was $10, right? And of course, I live in a place where they jacked up the minimum wage. Right? And what did most of us say? You're going to make everything more expensive, number one. And number two, you're going to kill jobs. That's what's going to kill jobs. You're begging for automation. You force McDonald's to pay $20 minimum wage. You force a grocery store, Kroger's, Giant, Ralph's, wherever you live in the country, to have to pay the cashier, you know, $25 an hour to just pass the little barcode. They don't even type in the. I'm young enough. I'm old enough to remember cashiers actually having to look at a price tag and type in the number on a cash register. They don't do that. They scan the freaking thing. The computer tells them how much it is. They don't even count money anymore. Everything's credit card, right? And so I remember 5-6 years ago here in the DC area, the cashiers went on strike, and I remember saying, "All right, you're going to make everything at the grocery store more expensive." And you're going to force automation because guess what? Anybody can walk up and scan that thing, stick it in a bag, and then pay in with a credit card. It's going to be self-serve. And you go to a grocery store right now, and you'll see exactly that's exactly what happens. And so these guys are fighting automation. They're demanding more money, and it's going to bring on automation. In fact, I'm looking at this. I'm pissed at these people, and I'm saying, I want more automation. I want these guys to have jobs. I don't want them to be out of work. But you're screwing up our economy. You're screwing up our supply chain. Screw them. I'm not going to knuckle under and give you more money. I'm going to say, let's fast track automation, for God's sake. The rest of us are all dealing with AI creeping up into our industries. I could be AI right now. How do you know I'm not AI? I'd be a lot better if I was AI, actually. It'd be a hell of a lot better. In fact, we should think about that. All right, back to this guy. Back to Paulie Walnuts here.
It's not fair.
No,
and if we don't put our foot down now, they would like to run over us, and we're not going to allow that.
You are going to grind the economy to a halt here on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast.
No, not us. They are. Don't spin it now because you're Fox News. They're going to drive it.
But are you worried? Are you worried that this strike?
They have the capital to settle this thing.
Are you worried that this strike is going to hurt the everyday American, the farmers that need to reach the export market? They're telling me that they're going to hurt through all of this.
Now you start to realize who the longshoremen are, right?
Nobody cares.
People never gave a about us until now, when they finally realized that the chain is being broke now. cars won't come in, food won't come in, clothing won't come in. You know how many people depend on our jobs? Half the world. And it's time for them and time for Washington to put so much pressure on them to take care of us, because we took care of them and we're here 135 years and brought them where they are today, and they don't want to share.
Fox News.
All right, so a couple things on this. We got one more clip on it, but I just let me just say this. I tend to lean toward management side on these things, always have, even though I am, in fact, ironically, a union member myself. Talk radio hosts in major markets like mine in Washington, D.C., we are forced to join the union. SAG-AFTRA, imagine that. I'm in the same union as Meryl Streep. So I whatever. I tend to side on management, but let me just say this: that guy right there, that guy you just saw, as much as I'm making fun of him and making fun of the, what it sounds like a, member of the Sopranos family and all that stuff. If I'm a union member, if I'm a longshoreman, that's exactly who I want fighting for me. That's exactly who I want handling these negotiations and handling the media. That's great. And you know who you want to talk about the political angles of this? Who does this hurt the most? As of now, this hurts Democrats. Now, I say that as of now. I'll complete that thought in a second. But one more clip here from this morning that I think is actually rather telling in terms of listen, this is about COVID, as you heard, and wanting to get payback for working through COVID. It's about automation and protecting jobs. It's about flexing your muscle. You saw him. It's like, yeah, you know who we are now. You know how important we are. Well, it's about time someone paid us our fair share, right? It's that kind of thing. It's like, we know we got you right here. And so you're going to pay us. Otherwise, we're going to squeeze, right? But there's also one more part of this that was revealed in this Fox News.
I've also been talking to the members here on the ground, the individuals here that are now taking to the picket line. They tell me one of their top concerns, inflation that we have all been living under for the past 4 years. They say that their wages are not adequately keeping up with the cost of living increase, and that they need these wage increases reflected in their next contract so they can just keep up and get.
That's right. This is clear, and this has little to do with unions and the longshoremen and negotiation. It has to do with the economy that we're all living in right now. Let's say you just signed a 4-year contract back in the final year of Trump's presidency, right? And you got incremental 4% wages for the next 4 years. Let's be even generous and say you got 5% wages over the next 4 years. That means at the end of the contract, your wages went up 20+% because each year it's a percentage on the percentage you already got, right? So it's 4%, 5% for 4 years, but it actually ends up being a little more. Well, the fact of the matter is things cost way more than just 20 some odd percent than it did 4 years ago. So even if you've got those wage increases, the cost of living has gone up so much higher that you're actually seeing less money at the end of every month right now, even though you got that generous package. That's inflation. That's Kamala Harris's fault. That's Joe Biden's fault. And so the inflation that we've all been suffering under, they're locked in a contract. It's not like this is their first chance to be able to come back and ask for a raise, and they want to make good on the money they lost in their mind over the last several years. So, this looks bad for Joe Biden. Joe Biden's Mr. I'm going to, fix labor problems. I'm going to pick up the phone. This does involve, you heard him say it's time for Washington, D.C. to get on board. This is a international brotherhood, but a national strike. Washington has a say in this. Our labor secretary, he claims, is doing a great job. Our transportation secretary is nowhere to be found. Our commerce secretary, as we showed you yesterday, isn't even engaged in this and doesn't know anything about it. It's all Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's fault. And the more it drags on, the worse it is for them. Except for this. I told you I was going to complete this thought. And I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I've seen so much go on in the last 10 years in American politics that I can't not entertain the idea that all of this is scripted. These guys have endorsed Kamala Harris for president. They've already chosen a side. What happens if we go for about a week or two and we feel some pain here and things are bad? And it's not Joe Biden that rides into the rescue. What if it's Kamala Harris that rides into the rescue? What if Kamala Harris gets everybody to sit down and make their deal? What if this guy ends up agreeing to a collective bargaining agreement, ending the strike, bringing relief back to so many businesses and so many employees around the country, getting huge headlines? And when asked, what made the difference? What brought you back to the table to make a deal? What if he says Kamala Harris? None of this would have happened without Kamala Harris. What if? The timing's impeccable, isn't it? What if? So this Sunday, for the first time this year, I had a chance to just sit down and do my favorite thing that I do on Sundays in the fall, watch the NFL. Yeah, I was on vacation for a couple of weeks at the beginning of the season. I was busy last Sunday and wasn't able to watch any NFL. This is my first day with my NFL Red Zone, with my multiple screens going, bouncing back and forth between games, watching my 4 fantasy football teams tick away. It was great. I loved it. But one thing was interesting because I usually don't watch broadcast television. And so while I was watching, I saw a bunch of ads. I saw a bunch of political ads. I saw a bunch of political ads for Kamala Harris. Boy, they've got a lot of money and they're flooding the zone right now with ads for Kamala Harris. But I kept seeing this one ad for Donald Trump, or more specifically, for a Donald Trump aligned super PAC. They kept playing the same ad over and over and over again during breaks on NFL Sunday, and it was very specifically placed on CBS and Fox during all of the NFL games, and last night during the Monday Night Football game. It's this ad right here.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. Even the liberal media was shocked Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners and illegal aliens.
Every transgender inmate would have access.
Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Oh, forgive me. I could have sworn this was for a super PAC. No, it's right from the Trump campaign, and it is brutal. We're going to let it play here on a loop because a lot of people watched this ad like this. If they were at a sports bar, they couldn't hear what was going on, but they saw it. If they were at a sports book, let's say in Vegas on all those big screens, or if they were at home and, the missus doesn't like hearing the football game, it's okay if you want to watch, but we don't need to hear it and blast out the house. So look at the imagery here. First of all, the title, Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners. There she is, talking with a transgender dude there and laying it out there that that's exactly what she's going to do in her own words. There she is. I think that's Photoshop, but that bald dude with the lipstick, as well as that Rachel Levine person, is part of the Biden administration. I do like the orange is the new black reference in here as well. Transgender operations on illegal aliens, true, again, in the prison system. And the fact of the matter is, the fact that they are putting biological men in women's prisons is an absolute human rights violation and a scandal. But of course, she supports that. And in addition to that, she supports paying for their pharmaceuticals, for their surgeries, for their therapies, for their procedures. And they're not only, it's not only her wanting to push this agenda, well, and this imagery too. It's amazing. It's so phenomenally effective. So not only do they want to support all of those agendas, but they want to use your tax dollars to pay for all of that stuff. And they want to pay for it for prisoners, people who have broken the law. You play by the rules. You follow the law. You're not in prison, but they're going to take dollars out of your pocket to pay for these procedures on people who have broken the law. And to boot, illegal immigrants who shouldn't even be in this country, who have come here, broken the law, even beyond our immigration laws that they've already broken. Now they want their transgender procedures, and they want you to pay for it. It's an incredibly powerful message. And I got to tell you, I had a house full of people. watching football with me. And a lot of them come from different political stripes, right? And they know who I am and they know what I do. And we all have, various political conversations. And I want to tell you, one of the people who was in the house said, because this ad kept playing, and said, and one of these people said, "Why, Larry, don't you think that ad's a little over the top?" It's pretty in your face. And I said, "Yeah, it's very in your face." What do you mean by over the top? Because everything about this ad is 100% accurate. It is 100% true. And this person actually didn't debate that with me. I know, it's just, I'm watching football and this is the message that's being beat over the head. Every break I see this ad, it's just kind of relentless. And I'm like, trust me, that message that you're seeing running on NFL football games, I swear to God, this was the conversation I had this Sunday, 2 days ago. They said that ad resonates with a huge number of people watching the NFL right now, voters that Donald Trump is trying to reach. This is an incredibly effective ad. Fast forward to yesterday morning, The Breakfast Club. This is the radio and streaming show hosted by Charlemagne the God. It appeals almost specifically, exclusively to an African-American audience. They're having their Monday morning roundtable discussion about what they did over the weekend and what was going on. And he leans to the left. He is a Democrat. He was skeptical of Kamala Harris at first, but I believe he supports Kamala Harris right now. And by the way, this is the guy, if you remember right, Joe Biden, during the interview, when Joe Biden says, "Listen, if you're voting for Donald Trump, you ain't black." That was Charlemagne the God. That happened on his show, okay? Here's the conversation on Breakfast Club yesterday morning about watching NFL. By the way, real fast, that was a professional morning show joke right there. Trust me, I do morning shows. That's what I do. I'm a morning radio host. And right there, that guy who said, "I don't know if I would say it was nuts," under surgeries. That is professional morning radio right there, my friends, and I applaud it. All right, I didn't mean to interrupt that, but let's go right back to it. Right? Absolutely brilliant. By the way, and this is what's really interesting to me, because the most impactful thing about this ad is that you see Kamala Harris saying it herself in her own words. I love that this ad said that Kamala Harris supports transgender procedures, which it does. But let's, again, the beginning.
For prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
It's hard to believe.
Having her say it in that little forum with the dude in the dress and the wig pretending to be a girl, it's beyond impactful. It's devastating. And I assure you, they're not the only ones, the team on The Breakfast Club, that were talking about it during the game and the next day. And by the way, it transcends just the Black community. We've talked quite a bit earlier in this program, as well as yesterday, about the Latino vote and how Latinos are moving away from Democrats in droves this year and moving toward Donald Trump. Why? Well,
What are the issues that move you towards Trump and move you and your community towards Donald Trump?
Well, mainly as the transgender and also the abortion right.
And you would say most of your community is choosing Donald Trump because of that?
Yes. The majority, yes.
I know that, Paul Ryan and these other, Larry Hogan and other Republicans are like, you know what, I'm not really a culture guy. I don't get involved in those issues. It's really about tax rates and spending and the actuarial tables on Social Security and Medicare and the threat of China undermining our trade policies. And yes, we really do sound like this because this is the kind of Republicans that we are. And listen, I'm not saying that our elections aren't about that. That stuff's super important. It 100% is. But while the Republican Party has been led by people like Paul Ryan or Mitt Romney or Larry Hogan or other Republicans who I'm not a culture war guy. That's what Paul Ryan said last year when the fights at the school boards over curriculum and transgender policies were really catching fire. And Paul Ryan says, I'm not a culture war guy. Well, our party's been led by people who are not culture war guys for decades. And while those guys focus on tax rates and spending and the actual tables about Social Security and Medicare, even though they never do anything about it, as they've been focusing on that, they haven't been focusing on the culture war stuff. And before you know it, our school boards are overrun by people who are trying to convince your children that they're not the sex that God made them when they were born. And even more so, they're now trying to get between you and raising your own children. Where if these children in our public schools share a sexual secret with a teacher, these teachers are being instructed to keep that secret from you, to lie to you, the parent, about your own child's sexuality. If those teachers drove up in a white van at a park, at a playground, and started sharing sexual secrets with children, they'd be arrested. But because it happens in a third grade classroom, they're not just protected, they're rewarded as Teacher of the Year. And if you object to it, you're a bigot, and the Justice Department starts investigating you as a domestic terrorist. That's what's happened in our school systems, while Paul Ryan and Republicans are saying, I'm not really a culture war guy. I don't really want to get my hands dirty with that kind of thing. Because then, George Stephanopoulos will say icky things about me. So here we are. But you know who doesn't mind getting his hand dirty with issues like that? This guy doesn't mind getting his hands dirty with issues like that. In fact, he raised it at the debate. Do you remember this moment? Watch Kamala Harris, by the way, shaking her head and suggesting that this is a lie.
Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
Remember, everybody saying, what's he talking about? That's not true. What is that? It's like one of the rare things that David Muir didn't come in and try to fact check, did he? This is one of the things they didn't fact check, I think, because it was a passing remark. But look at her face. What are you talking about? Just in the body language, anybody who's watching this who doesn't know the facts would say, Trump's out of his mind.
Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
Right. Oh, that's outrageous. That's not true. In fact, here we go. The next day, The Atlantic, Trump falsely suggested that Kamala Harris wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. Here we are at the New Yorker. Donald Trump said strange things, even by his own standards. He lamented that immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, are eating dog. Yeah, and then, and Kamala Harris wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison, right? So we have the fact checks the next day from the New Yorker and at the Atlantic, because let's be clear, the reason that they jumped on board and didn't research this issue and decided that this had to be false and had to be fact checked is because, understand, at the Atlantic and at the New Yorker, this right here.
Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
That is even too much for the writers at the Atlantic and the New Yorker. They are so freaked out about the idea that Kamala Harris would want to do taxpayer-funded transgender operations on illegal aliens in prison that not one part of them could even fathom that that was accurate. As crazy as they are at the Atlantic and the New Yorker on this issue, even this was beyond the pale. They didn't even take time to research. Well, that's got to be a lie. There is no way that Kamala Harris wants to take taxpayer dollars and fund transgender operations on illegal immigrants in prison. So let's just fact check it. Because even to those left-wing liberals, that's a bridge too far. Except that it's not. Because it's true. CNN.
Tonight, Kamala Harris releasing details of her policy positions for the first time on her campaign website. A K-file investigation has uncovered, meantime, a 2019 questionnaire. And in this questionnaire, Harris laid out some much more liberal stances, among them on immigration. So in 2019, in what K-file found, she said she would cut funding to ICE, writing, quote, "Our immigrant detention system is out of control, and I believe we must end the unfair incarceration of thousands of individuals, families, and children. I was one of the first senators after President Trump was elected to advocate for a decrease in funding to ICE." Well, now, of course, she's touting the Biden administration's executive order to crack down on the border. K-File's Andrew Kaczynski joins me now. Andrew, that's pretty incredible on its own.
Now, I'm going to pause this for a minute because they're going to move on now to the transgender operations for illegal aliens in prison. But I got to pause this because you got to see the lower right-hand corner here. Let's blow that up real fast, Kev. Do you see the graphic that they just put up? The graphic is promoting tomorrow night's presidential debate. You see what I'm getting at here? See, this clip.
Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
Was from the debate. This clip is from the night before the debate. So if anyone in the journalism world or in American politics or those writers at The Atlantic or New Yorker are actually paying attention to American politics, they would have already known that this was true. I mean, maybe they did and they just lied for Kamala Harris. But this was actually exposed the day before the debate. Now, listen to what was exposed about Kamala Harris.
You're talking about what you found here on ICE. What else did you find?
Yeah, and this was a questionnaire that she filled out for the ACLU. And this questionnaire is really an interesting snapshot in time of that 2019 Democratic primary. Kamala Harris was trying to get to the left of Bernie Sanders. She was trying to get to the left of Elizabeth Warren. And you really see that in a lot of these answers. And I want to walk our viewers through a little bit of what she said. Let's just take immigration and look at what she said here. She said on immigration, she made this open-ended pledge to end immigrant detention. She said she supported taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants. She also said she supported
Taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants. She
migrants.
actually said she supported that.
She both wrote and answered in the affirmative when she was asked this.
Oh.
And she said she also supported it for federal prisoners. Now, she also pledged to slash immigration detention by 50%, close all family and private facilities, and decrease funding for ICE, and then the end ICE detainers with local law enforcement.
I mean, these are things that, you know, it would be hard to think that you would come up with taxpayer funding gender transitions for detained migrants, and yet this, as you say, written and verbally. You know, what else? You know,
I love that they're sort of speechless. She's like, "What do I do with this? I know my job here is to try to sugarcoat it." And you know, good on CNN. Andrew Kaczynski, you know, he has good days, he has bad days, this guy. I've known him for a long time, and he does dig up stuff on, well, I guess both sides. Back when I knew him, he was only digging up stuff on one side, but then he got hired by BuzzFeed and then by CNN, and well, anyway, I'm glad he dug this up on Kamala. So, and now that you know that, now that you know the policies, it really does make that ad that much more effective, doesn't it? And more importantly, it makes this reaction. And illegal immigrants, by the way. I mean, you may say that you're not a culture war guy too. You may say, yeah, we should really talk about spending and taxes. And sure, we'll go ahead and talk about the border, I guess, this time because it got that bad. And maybe we should talk about crime in the streets. But this stuff, really, is that what this election is going to turn on? Yes. Yes. That's what this election is going to turn on. We've got no room right now for people who don't want to be culture war guys, because guess what? We don't have the choice. It's our culture. It's our country. It's our kids. It's our families. And if we don't focus on it, if we don't do something to protect them, then this is exactly where we end up. And oh, by the way, last I checked, Kamala Harris's side of the political equation, they don't seem to hesitate to get involved in culture issues. How do you think we got here? They injected their warped view of sexuality and the culture into our school systems, into the medical profession, into every corporation through DEI programs. They've proactively gone in there and forced this issue on us. It's up to us to defend. And last I checked, they're just fine celebrating abortion and talking about abortion as much as possible, every opportunity they get. They don't shy away from being a culture war guy. It's time for, guess what, guys? The culture war is here. We didn't ask for it. But if we don't fight it, well, we're going to lose a lot more than just an election. Guys, thank you so much for watching today. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. And thank you for all the comments, by the way. I was really taken. I went back and read a lot of the comments from yesterday, and they were really generous and really kind, and we really appreciate all the things you're saying. It keeps us motivated, it keeps us enthused, and it keeps us ready to see it tomorrow, which we will. That's it for today, though. Thank you so much for your time. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.